If we look at the so-called human energy system as like a hierarchy, where at the top you've got universal energy, then you've got the higher observer. This is like the part of you that like watches the thoughts as you're meditating. Intuition, the emotional process, the mind or the intellect. Then you've got body language, the voice, and then you've got the face, which is always expressing something. It's always in play regardless of whether you're specifically trying to express something or not. The mind is sort of in the middle between the outer and inner. And the mind can be a bridge between the outer and inner, or it can be a barrier. For many people, it's a barrier. As ideas of things to say and do bubble up from this intuitive subconscious process, they're filtered through the emotions, then they hit the mind. And very often the mind will be like, halt, before you're allowed access to the external communicators, I need to judge this impulse for usefulness or threat. Like, will this make me seem dumb if I say this? So again, if you have ever been in a conversation, you're at the dinner table or something, and everyone's kind of cracking jokes, and somebody says something, and you think of something really funny to say after that, like a retort, zing. But then you're like, wait a minute, should I say that? Is that actually funny, or is that stupid? Will that make me seem dumb? Okay, now that judgment process might only take a second, maybe even less. So you're like, okay, that's fine, I can say that. Well, now there's no timeout, so now it's moved ahead. The conversation has moved ahead a little. So one of two things happens: either you say it, and now it's like a beat too late, and it's not as funny, and it gives this impression of having second-guessed yourself, and thereby subcommunicated insecurity. Or B, more likely, you decide, oh yeah, it's too late now, and then you don't say anything, and now you have effectively run out of things to say. That's what's happening when you run out of things to say. It's this mind is the intellect is becoming it's a barrier, not a bridge. Very often, the mind has elevated itself to this position of authority over this entire system. But the problem is, the mind is very often not equipped to handle these very energies that it's put itself in control of. So you got to learn to trust the intuition and just let it flow. I have very little filter when I say things. Very, very little filter when I'm out and talking to people. And sometimes that gets me into some trouble. But again, I'm not trying to find 10 people that think I'm sort of cool. I'm trying to find the one that's like, whoa, this person's amazing. Holy shit, I really resonate with what they're throwing down. And if I have to talk to 10 people to find that one, I can do that, yeah.
Do you find that in business as well? Do you have no filter with business?
Well, I mean, when I say no filter, like, let me put it this way. The mind's a bridge, not a barrier, but even a bridge has guardrails. I'm not out there like, the Holocaust, you know, it's not just like teeing off and being this, because that's another problem. Sometimes you'll see somebody who kind of witnesses us being very, very free like this, and they maybe might hear me say one time something a little untoward. And then so they will become like, well, Jeff and fucking Justin say the crazy shit. I'm gonna say that because that clearly is what gets the results. So that becomes another crutch. And now they're not saying it because they genuinely find these things amusing. Now they're doing it to provoke a reaction, and then that becomes a problem. And that's a weak frame as well. It's funny too, because this one guy that does this, one student, he's like a bundle guy, and he's come on a bunch. He was saying this dumb shit. I'm like, yo, stop fucking saying this shit. He's like, but he's like, how come you guys can say it and I can't? And then my assistant's like, there's a reason the 4-year-old can't use the stove, but the 13-year-old can. You know what I mean? You are the 4-year-old. Like, you don't have the understandings of when it's appropriate to say those things, or like when it's not even appropriate, but like, and how to like get off of it and fix it if it doesn't hit right, and show like, yes, because generally social errors are fine if you are aware of them. It's only when you're not aware and oblivious that it makes you look stupid and like someone with poor social intelligence. But generally, to a point, because yeah, decorum comes into play as well. You know, you don't want to just be teeing off and saying all this vulgar shit at the opera, you know, or at the governor's ball or something. You know, there's decorum, there's a place and a time for certain things. That's an element of persuasion, really, is decorum. You have to understand the audience, you got to understand who you're talking to, and what's kind of like the parameters that are generally allowed there. However, that's why I enjoy going out in nightlife, because you can't say things that you can say in nightlife almost anywhere else. Honestly, I don't even view these programs as like work for me. It's just an absolute pleasure for me to go out there and just kind of flex, spread my wings, and kind of get out there and just be very free flowing. Love seeing the the growth in the students. I love seeing the transformation happen. I love understanding. I love getting these messages. I literally got one this afternoon before I came here. You know, let me read this. It's like, bro, I'm killing it. Thanks again. Should have done this shit earlier. Yesterday I was out by myself, met a lot of people of my own, hooked up with some girls, and love it. Thanks. You know, this guy, he was like another dude who had been studying this stuff for many years. But he kind of wasn't. That's the thing. It's like you can study this stuff for many, many years on your own, and you might make it through, but it's like, how fast do you want to get there? You could walk to New York from here. You could do that. Like Forrest Gump, you could fucking walk there, or you could ride a bike. That would take a little less time. You could drive. That would take significantly less time. Or you could fly. That would take a lot less time. But again, it's going to cost you some resources. You're going to have to do the cost-benefit analysis on that. You know, that's what I'm here to do as a 20-year person who's been studying this, eating, breathing, and sleeping for literally 2 decades, teaching this stuff every fucking weekend. I can see very quickly where people's gaps are in their knowledge, where they're not doing it correctly, give them the understandings, give them the skills, push them. Like, I'm there to do 3 things. Number 1, inspire that it's real. Like, this isn't just some stories. You know, you hear me telling these little stories and stuff. It's one thing to hear telling the stories. It's quite another to see us out there doing it. And you say, oh, that's what it looks like when somebody very highly experienced does this. Okay. It's like a knack. You guys know what a knack is? Right? Like snapping or whistling. Remember when you were a little kid trying to like learn how to whistle? You're like, how do they do it? And you maybe ask your mom how you do it. Your mom's like, oh, you put your tongue like this, like get it, like. And you keep doing it, you just can't do it, and then you're like, oh, that was kind of it, and then once you get it, now you can do it forever. How do you hit that non-needy yet empathetic sweet spot? Once you learn that, you'll never forget it. So it's about showing that, inspiring, that it's real. Normal people can do this. You don't need to be like some 6'5" male model or anything like that, like normal. I'm just very average in most every way, slightly above average dick, but aside from that, very, very average person. That's number 1. Number 2 is push, again, like I said, push you beyond the conditioned limits in a non-judgmental space where you can, again, make that leap without judgment through the fear into the unknown where the growth happens. And then number 3, provide feedback. Anyone here study Alexander technique? It's very commonly thought of as a posture technique. So in the late 1800s, there was an actor called F. Matthias Alexander. What Alexander discovered is that what he calls the primary control, which is the head, neck, torso relationship, is very often responsible for creating a pinched sort of expression. It's where the head rests on the C1 vertebrae. And so many people, due to like phones or heavy backpacks or slouching in chairs, they kind of go like this. They have like a very sort of, and even hear how my voice sounds when I do that versus when I do like this. Is a slight difference in the tonality. So when I'm talking like this versus when I'm talking like this, like I'm not materially changing my voice consciously in any way when I do that. But you can hear there's sort of kind of a pinched quality to it there. But when I go up here, it's a bit more like resonant and whole, like you're talking to the whole person. So anyway, one of the things that he talked about is what he called unreliable sensory appreciation. And that's, the body is giving you signals that all is well when in fact all is very wrong, right? So you can like have a person who's slouched in front of a fucking television and they feel like they're relaxing, but in fact they're grossly abusing their body. So you don't know what you're doing in many cases because number 1, you can't see your own face. Most of the time. I want to make you, number 1, experientially aware of the gap between what you think you're doing and what is being perceived by other people, right? And then number 2, once you are aware of that gap, now we can take measures to close the gap. So for example, the student the other night, they think he's a fucking tool, but he thinks he's being this like Rico Suave motherfucker. And then they leave and he's just like mocking them. And so I'm like, yo, they were mocking you and laughing and mimicking your behavior because they found it creepy. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know that. And I'm like, I'm not saying these things to make you feel bad. I'm just saying like you need to understand what's being perceived by other people. So again, a lot of people are unaware that they have facial armoring. And a lot of people are unaware that they're doing that the way that they're coming across is, has a needy or desperate vibe. There's about 50 or 60 things I'm looking for. So that's what I'm trying to do on those programs is those 3 things: inspire, push, and give critical feedback.
It has improved my stage performance a lot, and I think actually also my conversation impacts performance a very lot. It takes a lot of pressure off you. You can focus on just saying what you think is funny in the moment, which is a very attractive feature, and people sense that and they get attracted to you. The exercises actually spills in and affect my conversations and my stories when I'm out in real life. The exercises you do at home will affect you out in the world, and you can actually improve on those things. So that's also a big one for me. The personal leadership, taking that action and going in and doing those bold approaches, and taking even more risk on stage and in conversation. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to go to the alumni group and increase my process there.